This week's episode of Pugsley's Pit is an audio-only version. For future audio-only versions of Pugsley's Pit, check out the links below so you can download, subscribe, rate, and review. And once the audio versions are out, it comes right on your phone. Before we get into this week's Pugsley's Pit, we want to give love to the people that make Gozilla Media podcasts possible. Like our friends over at Mohawk Honda, the Kelly Blue Book offer is going on right now. You want a new vehicle? Wherever you're listening across upstate New York, your spot is Glenville, New York, and Mohawk Honda. Stop in and say what's up to our guy, Greg Johnson, Andy Gelcher, over at Mohawk Chevrolet, Cam McKenna, Brian McKenna, Lindsay Harrington, and more. You've been seeing the great things they've been doing on social media. Shout out to Nick and Nate and the crew over there sharing the wonderful events. We're able to be a part, Gozilla Media, of the most recent event with the Special Olympic athletes. So exciting to be able to support these great athletes and more. Now you can stop over to the Mohawk family, and in particular Mohawk Honda. Get yourself a new ride. 2022 Pilot EXL. Love talking about how it's sitting in my driveway right now. You want to have the bragging right that you've got the best vehicle you've ever had in your life thanks to Mohawk Honda. I get to say that. Now you can too. Back to that Kelly Blue Book offer. Roll into Mohawk Honda, get yourself a new vehicle, trade in your own vehicle, and you can drive off the lot with a new car and money in your pocket. It's all possible thanks to Mohawk Honda, where they always go out of their way to please you. And don't forget, this Saturday, the Albany Empire are back home in the MVP Arena. And Gozilla Media is your spot for the pregame show from 3:30 to 5 o'clock. We'll bring you all the action behind the scenes from MVP Arena. And if you want to come out and support the Albany Empire, make sure to check out the block party outside MVP Arena. Enjoy drinks, food, and more, and then cheer on the Empire inside the MVP Arena. A battle between the two top teams in the NAL as the Carolina Cobras come to town. Albany Empire football. Tickets now available at albanyempirenal.com. Now, on to this week's episode of Pugsley's Pit.
Hey ho, let's go, folks. Happy Memorial Day to everyone. Hope you're well wherever you are as we honor today those who made the ultimate sacrifice to our country. Memorial Day 2022. I am Sean Pugsley Martin. This is episode 20. You tolerated me a long time of Pugsley's Pit. And as always, we always do each week. We begin each show with a question. Where else would you rather be than right here, right now? Home game here tonight with the day off from work. Here we are at home getting ready to get into one of my favorite topics. Before we do that, by way of introduction, I'm a freelance sports writer for the Albany Times-Union, sports enthusiast, big-time homer, no apologies. It's the way it goes. Can also be found as co-host of M&M Across the Board podcast with my good friends Ashley and Eric. You can follow the show on Twitter at Pugsley's Pit, YouTube, Apple, Spotify is where you can find us. On today's show, a big welcome to a pair of guests, Tom Goslowski, owner of Gozilla Media, the production company for our program, and Darrin, a longtime friend of mine since way long back. Fantasy football commissioner extraordinaire. And the reason I got this all-star lineup here tonight, Tommy Pham and Jock Peterson gave us all something to talk about. Fantasy players could probably relate. I've been a commissioner of a baseball league for 33 years now, hoops and hockey for over 10. I've seen a lot of odd things in the fantasy world. Never anybody taking a punch at anyone, although we've had a few threats. Boys, you guys are kind of involved in the same thing. I've been in Darrin's league for probably close to 20 years now for football. Guys, I had yours last year. What were you guys' thoughts about the little kerfuffle in Cincinnati the other night?
Darrin, I'm going to go first on this one. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be a part of Pugsley's Pit on this one, especially when we're talking fantasy football. As you mentioned, got to compete against each other this year. Never quite this level of getting physical with other people. I think that's fortunate that nobody's got this upset over something. Usually it's just a lot of healthy ribbing. I know this past year we had a drafted, or as I like to call it, under the orange roof. They're sponsors, Hooters. I can give them a shout out. That people didn't like a trade that had gone down. And people were relentless about the trade. It was tight end for a running back straight up. People didn't like it, how it all went down. But no one's ever gotten physical. The biggest difference is how you have those settings for your league. If you're playing for a title or a belt, that's pretty cool. If you're playing for fun, that's cool. But what we learned with Tommy Pham and Jock Peterson and maybe other fantasy football or fantasy baseball leagues, whatever it might be, when it comes to people's money, attitudes change. Whether that's $5, $100, $1,000, I don't care if you're 18 or 58. When you start playing around with people's money, they get ticked. That's the difference I've learned. You start playing in money leagues, people do not want you to alter the ways in which they win or lose cash. And that was a prime example here with Jock Peterson and Tommy Pham.
Dee, what were your thoughts on that with your experience as a fantasy commissioner? How would you handle that?
Well, same servants. There's never been any physicality in our league in 21 years, Sean, as you know. But we have had people quit in over disputes just last year. And there was a couple of years ago, another guy who doesn't play anymore, but you were involved, and I was trying to play peacemaker, but that guy was just a big conspiracy theorist. So some people get way into the weeds, a little too deep and overthinking it, and start almost acting like a 9/11 truther and thinking everybody's conspiring against them. So those are the two things I think as a commissioner you got to deal with. One, you have to kind of be ready to deal with allegations of collusion, and you hope that never comes up, but some people will accuse other people of colluding, maybe dropping a good player intentionally when their buddy has the first waiver pick or something like that, or stashing people when they're not doing well and then making a bad trade, which happens to help another guy who maybe is his friend, or God forbid they're like making a side deal to like split the money later or something like that. That's the ultimate. That really is collusion. But you get a lot of accusations that are kind of just BS. And the one involving you clearly was because it also involved me. So I know what I did and didn't.
Yeah, the commissioner. And it happened to be somebody we grew up with, too. But it was, Darius, I think it was Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton had a big breakout game.
Yeah.
I had no use for him the next week, and he was going on a bye week, so I cut him and was accused of, I don't even know how you got involved with the collusion, because nobody picked the player up.
Yeah, well, Slayton was the second week, but the first week it was a different guy. It was like the third string wide receiver on Atlanta, maybe at the time.
You're right. Mohamed Sanu had a big week.
Yes, Sanu.
Yeah.
Right. And
especially with New England, when they have a guy have a 200-yard rushing game and he's on the bench for the next 4 games. So, yeah, I mean, to me, challenging someone's integrity, that's the worst you can do in a fantasy league. For me, it's all about character. Look, I want to win. I'm competitive as all hell. But I've been running these leagues since I had a full head of hair. I'm not about to cheat anybody. I mean, come on. What are we doing here? Especially in football. As long as everybody respects the fact that leave all the Raiders for me, there shouldn't be a problem. That's my only issue. But the closest thing we had in my baseball league, Glens Falls was up here, and thank God Philadelphia was down south, because we had a guy threaten to call dual loners in Philly and drive down to there and kick both their asses. And it drew him the nickname The Godfather, and that became his team name from that point on until he ended up leaving our league. It was hysterical.
Wait a second. I gotta get a follow-up. You're telling me this guy was willing to kick ass over this fantasy football league? He was willing to drive to find these people to take him out?
He was really upset.
Oh, man.
He was really upset. I mean, and I called him. I said, dude, you're the Godfather. Good for you. And, he just left the league a few years ago. Darrin, you were in the league then. Maybe not then, but back, you knew Dave from up north. Loved him to death. He'd have 2 beers and you'd think he had 24.
From the baseball?
From the baseball league, yeah. He was the comedic show every year at the live draft. But, yeah, that was the thing. He wanted to go down. He lost his mind on these 2 guys in Philadelphia and threatened to drive down and beat both their asses.
Baseball, yeah.
You always have that one guy, right? My baseball league's pretty clean now, and there some of them are going to watch this. So but to be fair, what do you do when you got that one guy that's just a stickler, a little over realistic, maybe a little too gung ho? It's just a pain in the ass. Let's call it for what it is. I mean, how do you handle that guy in the league?
In our field in media, we kind of work with people, whether it be writing, audio, video, that might have a few egos here and there. We're not going to name names, but that's just like the media world we work in. I would rather personally have a stickler than a person who didn't care. Like if I got somebody blowing me up every single week, like I think this trade should go through, and they're giving you BS trades just to test out who knows what and who saw the. I personally would rather have a stickler than somebody when it's week 9 and you got 4 guys on a bye week and they didn't update their roster, or they like updated at the last second and they got guys who aren't going to contribute. I know what you're saying. Like there's going to be people who annoy you and they want everything changed and they think they should win every week. I'm okay with the competition. I know there's a fine line between super competitive and super annoying, but I'll take those two over super lazy any day of the week. So I'm okay with the sticklers. And maybe saying that out loud, I'm not one of those people. You know, I know like, oh, Goz is defending the stickler now. That means he's the one. No, I'm not. But I would rather take them than super lazy.
And my general rule is as long as you have an active, fulfilled lineup, it's not for me to tell you what to do. Okay, that's kind of how I feel. But that doesn't always happen. You know, Darrin had an issue last year. Do you want to expand on that? It was improper lineup. Somebody got mad, and the email thread or the text message thread went crazy.
My league, basically, it's not just ranking on CBS Sportsline determines whether you make the playoffs as a wild card. So there's 3 parts to it, and 1/3 of it is called breakdown, and that's your record again had you played every other team in the league every week. So the stickler was messaging me saying that by, not playing his best lineup, he was actually affecting the breakdown. The other teams would now have a better record against him, saying. So long story short, basically on a Tuesday and adjust this guy's lineup and shift it around. So it would have been, so he would have played guys who are at least like 2 who are at least active. So in the league basically said no way, and the guy quit.
Yeah. We had a spot going back 15, 16 years ago. One of my friends was out of the playoffs, or he'd already qualified. I can't remember. He had no reason to win. But the team he was playing needed to win to get in the playoffs over my buddy's arch rival, if you follow that. And the one guy in the league was a pain in the ass, and I couldn't stand doing fantasy sports with him. Thank God he quit after this. But my buddy basically set a lineup of all players that had ties to USC, knowing he was going to lose the game and let the other guy get in the playoffs over his buddy. And it worked out exactly that. His buddy missed the playoffs. He quit the league. But before he quit the league, he asked if we could keep the scoring going for the non-playoff teams. The guy would have won the Super Bowl. And his friend just not screwed him. I thought it was hysterical because I couldn't stand the guy, and I was thrilled when he finally quit the league. He was a pain in the ass, and he wasn't worth it. Again, and guys, you're right. I like people's passion. I would rather have passion than apathy.
Yes, and that's the thing. Like even that last week scenario you're talking about, I had played through a league this year that had the same thing where you said, "Look, I'm like the number 1, or I'm going to be the number 1 seed. I might not play my best lineup this week." In similar fashion, what Darrin was talking about, where you might get a really good team as like the 6 or 7 or 8 seed. You're like, I actually don't want them in the first round. Like I'm going to try to find a way to. If it's within NFL, and look, tanking's a whole different story. Future draft picks, that's a whole different combination. But I'm talking about like if you think what you're doing that final week of the season is going to benefit you, I'm okay with that. But that story you just told Sean about guys screwing each other. That's too diabolical.
And you call them, hey, what are you doing? No,
Right,
hey, look,
yeah.
I've earned my place. I want to have my USC guys represent, and I didn't step in. Here's the question I ask you guys, Darrin. You're more of an ultimate authority league. My baseball league is you put up polls and 1 person, 1 vote. What do you guys think is best as far as the best way to run a league? No matter what you do, you're not going to make everyone happy. That's going to happen, and that's okay. You get personalities, and everyone's got different opinions, and that nothing wrong with that. But any opinion on which is best?
Are you saying as pure democracy or just as basically a dictatorship?
in a very non-political way, yes, that's what I'm saying.
Well, I make it clear that I'll take input. It's a dictatorship.
Almost a half answer from me too, because I know what you're saying there, Darrin, where it's like, hey, you guys are in the league and you know the way you'll vote will benefit your team for certain trades. And I respect the hustle is what I'll phrase that as. Like, I know what you guys are up to. Nice try. Almost like a substitute teacher and a kid would change their name and say, oh, no, our teacher lets us leave class 10 minutes sooner. I know all your games is what, certain fantasy managers are like. I actually think some of this has changed post-COVID because a lot of drafts used to be done in person and live, and people, at least for my buddies who I play with, we'd always find out the weekend and the time and place. But then as you get a little bit older, you get families, you live out of town, it's a lot harder. So if you've got to find things like adjust the draft time or go Zoom or go virtual or, trade deadlines might have to change. You might have to have, I think more flexibility has almost had to happen in fantasy leagues post-COVID because everything's changed. So, yeah, I think earlier it was more dictatorship. In post-2020, it's been more, let's just make sure we do this as fair as we can from now on.
Yeah, like with my league, I try and, the one thing as a commissioner you have to do is the betterment of the league has to supersede what you're doing for your own team. It's part of the job. Right. But yeah, our baseball draft, it's funny, times do change. Well, our first draft was in 1990, and forever we had everybody in person, whether we're in Newburgh, Massachusetts, Philadelphia, Glens Falls, Albany. Now I think we had 8 out of 12 this year, which is still pretty good. Especially it was our first time in 3 years that anybody had seen each other live. It had all been virtual prior to that, but still a lot of fun.
Nothing better than a live draft. It's so much fun getting back with your buddies, having a few beers, busting on each other, saying who team's the best, what team's the worst. It's almost that mark on the calendar of like, all right, if we're all going to get together at one point, let's get a few months in advance and make sure you tell the wives, girlfriends, fiancés, all right, I'm out for this day. I'll give you 364. That's right.
That's what we do for baseball. And the best part about the baseball now is I have little kids, and another buddy of mine up in Albany area has a little one. So the guys in Newburgh, who kids are all sprung, they like coming up to Albany now. Instead of us going down there every other year, we used to rotate. Like, no, you guys got the kids. We'll come up and we'll just stay in a hotel, and it gives them a night out. So there's no complaining there. Real quick, before we let you guys go, what's the strangest thing you ever saw in your fantasy leagues, or oddest thing? Anything jump to mind?
Ooh, this is a good question. So you're talking sort of like things that have happened outside the field of play, like involving manager to manager you're talking about, right? Like weird trades and stuff? Okay. One of the weirdest things I've seen is I had a friend who, let's just say he was at times, we used to have a keg post-college at the draft. Let's say that's right. One of our friends, let's just say, was overserved or didn't realize how long the draft would be during our fantasy football draft. And it got to like the 4th round and he was up. And he just kind of looked around. He's like, all right, I'm not ready yet. You guys can skip me if you want. We're like, you can't get skipped? What are you talking about? You can't get skipped? And then all of a sudden, the next round, he said, all right, I'm trading my 5th round pick for my 6th round pick for this other guy. We're like, no, you don't get any. You got to get like something else. You can't just do a 5th for a 6th. He's like, no. I'm not ready. I don't have the players I want yet on my team. I'm like, he needs to be careful with the keg from now on. Maybe we'll tell him that. But that's the weirdest I've seen, where he actually intentionally got skipped, made his pick like 3 picks later, and then later in that same draft traded a 5th for a 6th. He actually almost made the playoffs because of injuries. We all know how fantasy goes, but that's the strangest. Once the keg got involved and the judgment was questions, let's just say.
It's part of the experience. You got to prepare. Back in the day, we'll call it single days. I would prepare for weekends on end, 6 months on end for the draft day, for the case day.
I heard that case day. I heard you sneak that in.
Thing I saw, the same guy, Dave, Two Beer Burb was his nickname before it became the Godfather. We're in the draft. He goes, I draft my cat. I'm like, what? And one person laughed because he knew that his cat's name was Pedro Martinez. Instead of just.
It's good. It's good.
So, all right, fellas, look. Appreciate your time. We'll do this again as we get closer to fantasy football. I'm getting ready to load up on all Raiders this year again. Because when they do well, I make the playoffs, which means I've made the playoffs in my leagues like twice in 18 years. So hopefully we got another one coming.
Good seeing you. Appreciate it. The trash talk can start now. We're only a few months away. I like it.
All right, boys. We'll see you guys.
See ya.
All
right, Darrin and Goz. Thanks, boys. Thanks for coming on. Always never too early to talk fantasy football and always a good time to talk fantasy sports. Hey, let's go to my world now. NBA Finals preview. It's up there on the board, the Shamrock Celtics. I'm going to pick the Celtics. The Warriors are tough. They've had a great run in the playoffs. What I like about the Celtics is their depth and their defense. Defense wins championships. My problem in picking the Celtics, they seem to just not show up from time to time. They have too many turnovers in games. They get their doors blown off. But every time they've been challenged, every time their backs have been going to the wall in this playoff run, they managed to win. And pulling out a great Game 7 last night shows me they can win this. I'm going to pick Boston in 7 over Golden State. It should be a great series. I think the biggest difference, Marcus Smart can lock up Steph Curry if that's the assignment, or Klay Thompson utilized the Defensive Player of the Year. Robert Williams, I don't think the Warriors can answer for him. If he's healthy and he's playing well, Draymond Green, but Al Horford's down there. I think the Celtics, they both have a lot of talent, but I think the Celtics have more depth and more guys that can do damage and help them win. So Boston in 7 is the pick in the NBA. The Rangers, as we speak, are winning 2-0, which is really awesome because I hate Carolina with a passion. Rod Brindamore, two-time winner of the Whiny Bitch of the Week award here on Pugsley's Pit. I'd like to see a season end in the next couple hours. But the big matchup, Edmonton and Colorado. Pick the Avs to win the Cup at the start of the playoffs, and I still think they're going to. But you got to give Connor McDavid credit. The best player in the game going into this playoffs has absolutely elevated his game and that of his team. They beat Calgary in 5. I don't know how many people really saw that coming. But great run for Edmonton. That's going to be a great, great series. And while we're talking on hockey, I want to give a shout out to my man, Brad Marchand. He's going to be out about 6 months with multiple surgeries. Get back soon, buddy. We need you. And then also, hey, speaking of the Whiny Bitch of the Week award, Antonio Brown announced he was not going to play this year. That's mighty big of him. It's easy to say that when nobody wants to hire you. Called himself one of the greatest players in the history of the game. Not true. Could have been true. But his brains are scrambled. He's self-absorbed. I'm not going to call it mental illness. I just think he's an asshole, and that's just how it is. So I'm not going to be upset if his career is over because he killed my Raiders, and I'll never forget that. But he's a guy that had great talent, just didn't get it. So not going to miss you, AB. So if that's it for you, if that's your swan song, good luck in retirement. I'm sure you do well. I'm sure you're going to make some cash, get that personality, some people like you. But good luck with that. So on that note, episode 20 of Pugsley's Pit is in the books. We'll see you all next week. Bye now.